The 2024 Republican primary heads to another critical swing state after a big win over the weekend for former President Donald Trump. He easily beat former Ambassador Nikki Haley in South Carolina, her home state. That was on Saturday, although he did not win by as much as some were expecting. Haley is vowing to fight on now, and she is focused on the next primary. That one will be in Michigan tomorrow. Ed O'Keefe is in the state's biggest city. Ed, good morning to you.
Tony, good to see you. The former president dominated the South Carolina GOP primary among men, women, the young and old, and mostly rural areas of that state. But Haley is soldiering on in this battleground state, rallying supporters today.
Former President Donald Trump may have won big in South Carolina, but the state's former governor, Nikki Haley, says she isn't going anywhere.
You can't have a candidate who's going to win a primary who can't win a general.
Despite losing her home state, she's now on a 10-day nationwide tour with more than 20 campaign rallies and fundraisers. As Haley's campaign says she raised another $1 million in the hours after the South Carolina finish. Haley says she represents the concerns of Republicans that Trump can't win over.
He's not going to get the 40% if he is not willing to change and do something that acknowledges the 40%.
Michigan's Republican primary is next on Tuesday and is open to Democrats and independents. Haley supporters we met cross party lines and want her to keep going, like this Democrat.
She's the only one that could part the Red Seas of Trumpism.
And this Republican.
She doesn't have all of the court cases and drama. She is a person of character. She's a person of integrity.
But a national conservative group that helped campaign early for Haley plans to stop spending on her because we don't believe any outside group can make a material difference to widen her path to victory.
I have never seen the Republican Party so unified as it is right now.
Meantime, Trump's Friday night comments to conservative black voters in South Carolina are still drawing controversy.
These lights are so bright in my eyes that I can't see too many people out there. But I can only see the black ones. I can't see any white ones, you see. That's how far I've come.
He also claimed his dozens of criminal indictments are boosting his standing with black voters.
We've all seen the mugshot. And you know who embraced it more than anybody else? The black population. It's incredible.
The co-chair of President Biden's campaign blasted the comments as moronic and just plain racist.
So as Haley nears a mathematical dead end in her quest for delegates to stop former President Donald Trump, there may have been some silver lining in the exit polls in South Carolina, where 1/3 of primary voters said the former president would be unfit to serve again if he's convicted at all of a crime. Tony?
Ed, I got it. President Biden, on the other hand, he's on the ballot in Michigan on Tuesday as well, and there could be some trouble brewing there for him. What can you tell us about it?
That's right. He's not facing a major opponent so much as he's facing a concept. Here in Michigan, voters have the option of voting uncommitted on their ballot, essentially a none-of-the-above option, and there are progressives in this state and across the country urging Democrats to do so to register their opposition to his stance on the Israel-Hamas war. We were at a rally yesterday with those pushing for this concept. We'll have much more on this tomorrow. Tony?
All right, looking forward to that. Ed, thank you very much.
And speaking of the war in Gaza, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is vowing to complete his mission to defeat Hamas regardless of ceasefire talks. In Tel Aviv, Israelis protesting against Netanyahu's handling of the war were dispersed, you see it there, by a police water cannon over the weekend. Now, all this comes as Palestinians in the Gaza city of Rafah brace for a possible ground assault by the Israeli army. Holly Williams has more on that part of the story.
In the ruins of Gaza City, stalked by hunger and fear, some have reached breaking point. I wish my children were dead so they couldn't ask me for bread. I cannot feed my own children, shouts this man. But on Face the Nation yesterday, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he's determined to launch an offensive in Rafah in southern Gaza, where around 1.5 million Palestinians are now sheltering.
We can't leave a quarter of Hamas battalions in Rafah and say, well, that's fine. Total victory is our goal, and total victory is within reach, not months away, weeks away, once we begin the operation.
But the price of Israel's total victory is being paid not just by Hamas, but by Palestinian civilians. Mohammed Al-Farah is a Palestinian journalist who lives in the West Bank. He told us his sister Seemat, her husband and 3 daughters were killed by an Israeli airstrike in Gaza in October. This is the moment he heard the news.
Were you able to recover her remains after the airstrike?
We found the bodies of my sister and brother-in-law, he told us. But we couldn't recognize the children's faces.
Israel says it has a plan to evacuate civilians from Rafah. Now, that ceasefire deal being negotiated could reportedly see a 6-week pause in fighting and the release of dozens of hostages in return for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. Gayle.
Details tough to hear. These are human lives we're talking about. Never forget that. Thank you, Holly Williams, reporting from Israel. In Washington, D.C., a man is in critical condition after lighting himself on fire to protest the war in Gaza. We've learned that he is an active duty member of the U.S. Air Force. This happened yesterday outside the Israeli embassy, where the man live streamed himself. The fire was put out by members of the Secret Service. Nobody at the embassy was hurt.
Turning to the war in Ukraine, the country's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, is out with a dire new warning saying millions of Ukrainians could die if his country doesn't get more U.S. aid. As Charlie D'Agata reports, the Ukrainian military is feeling the pressure.
An historic train station, a church, and nearby homes in flames from Russian missile strikes in eastern Ukraine. Nothing new, except for Ksenia's parents, who lost everything. I was asleep. Lightning lit up the whole room, she said. My parents are now homeless. We'll have to figure out what to do now. President Zelensky said Ukrainians are dying by the day because of a lack of Western support, revealing for the first time the figure of 31,000 Ukrainian soldiers killed since the invasion began, though even U.S. analysts put the number at more than twice that. Whether Ukraine will lose depends on you, on our partners, on the Western world, he said. If we will be strong with weapons we will not lose, we will win. And while Congress wrestles over that $60 billion Ukraine funding package, Russian forces have gone on the attack at several points along the front line after capturing the city of Avdiivka. In a stark warning, Zelensky said Congress knows that Ukraine needs that aid package within a month to spare more lives, civilians and soldiers alike. President Zelensky completely shot down any idea of direct negotiations with Russian President Vladimir Putin, saying we'll only offer him a platform where he can agree that he has lost this war and it was a mistake. Tony?
Charlie D'Agata for us in Ukraine. Charlie, thank you very much. Back in this country, President Biden will bring congressional leaders to the White House tomorrow in an effort to, anyway, break an impasse over aid to Ukraine. Scott McFarland has more on that part of the story from Capitol Hill. Scott, good morning.
Tony, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan warned this weekend Vladimir Putin's army will advance each day this aid package is delayed. But House Speaker Mike Johnson says he won't be rushed in bringing to the floor a Senate plan that offers about $60 billion to Ukraine. There are a number of House Republicans who insist on new border security measures in the U.S. before they unlock Ukraine aid, even though Republicans blocked a Senate effort to do just that earlier this month. Ukraine is just one of the pressing issues. Also, Friday, a deadline here in Congress to avoid a partial government shutdown. Gayle, that could impact the paychecks and services for service members and tens of thousands of federal workers.
Scott, thank you very much. We are learning more about the murder of a nursing student who was out for a jog in Georgia. Her name, she was 22 years old. Her name was Laken Riley. She was attacked and killed while running on a college campus Thursday morning. Now, officials are calling this a crime of opportunity. The man accused in her death, Jose Ibarra, lives nearby. Mark Strassman has the story.
Laken Riley.
Laken Riley, an Augusta University nursing student, was killed while jogging Thursday morning. Police say a friend reported Riley missing. Officers found her body in the woods behind a popular running trail.
The individual was unconscious and not breathing and had visible injuries.
The following day, police arrested 26-year-old Jose Ibarra and searched his apartment just south of where Riley's body was found. Police believe Ibarra acted alone and had no prior relationship with Riley.
He did not know her at all. I think this was a crime of opportunity.
Ibarra faces 8 charges, including malice murder, felony murder, and kidnapping. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement says Ibarra, a Venezuelan citizen, unlawfully entered the country near El Paso, Texas in September 2022. He was detained and then released by Border Protection. In September 2023, ICE says Ibarra was arrested in New York City for allegedly endangering a child.
It's so frustrating.
Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, one of several Republican leaders linking the killing to federal immigration policies.
Why are we allowing people to come here that are not U.S. citizens and break our laws and then not send them back home?
For CBS Mornings, I'm Mark Strassman in Atlanta.
Now to some big changes in weather. A surge of heat is expected in the central U.S. today from Texas to Minnesota. It could get into the 90s in the south. For more on this and some possible severe storms ahead, let's bring in meteorologist Stephanie Abrams with our partners at the Weather Channel. Steph, good morning.
Nate, good morning. The next couple of days could be so warm it'll feel like April or even May. In fact, records could fall that have stood for more than a century. Today, Dallas-Fort Worth could hit its first 90-degree day of the year, and tomorrow, spring-like temps continue all the way into Chicago. One place not seeing the record warmth, that's the Northwest, where it'll be cloudy, rainy, and snowy throughout the day today. Gusty winds as well, and another system right behind that for our Tuesday. In the mountains, up to 2 feet of snow will fall through tomorrow. Now, the system in the Northwest today swings east, taps into all of that heat, producing severe weather late Tuesday in the Midwest. It continues overnight into Wednesday morning as well. We're talking hail, damaging winds, and a few tornadoes are all possible. For more in-depth coverage, you can watch the Weather Channel on cable or live on your favorite TV streaming devices. Nate, February averages 41 tornadoes, second least active month, only behind January.
Wow, how about that? All right, Steph, thank you so much.
Now to a Supreme Court fight that could transform the way we interact online. The justices will hear arguments today in an effort to control how social media companies moderate their platforms. Jan Crawford has more on this. Jan, good morning. It's a big one.
It is, Tony. I mean, these two cases concern laws in Florida and Texas that were aimed at protecting conservatives' viewpoints on social media. So on the one hand, you've got Republican lawmakers who are basically saying in these states they're reacting to Twitter and Facebook's ban of former President Trump from those social media platforms after the January 6 riots. And they say these social media companies should be regulated like businesses and not be allowed to remove users' posts based on their viewpoints or to ban political candidates. And then on the other side, you've got the social media companies, Facebook and YouTube, and they're saying, like, wait a minute, these laws infringe on our editorial content. We should be treated like news outlets, and we should be able to have First Amendment protection and editorial control over our content. So if the court rules in favor of these stays beyond the practical concerns, critics are saying that that could make social media even more of a free-for-all, going well beyond political speech. Tony?
Hard to imagine being more of a free-for-all. Jan, thank you very much.
A wild scene at a college basketball game is renewing safety concerns about a long-standing tradition: home team fans storming the court to celebrate an upset victory. That's what Wake Forest fans did on Saturday after their team defeated local rival Duke. One of the players was seen limping off the court after colliding with fans. This incident and others like it has critics calling for action. Wake Forest celebrations turned scary in an instant.
Kyle Filipowski is being helped off
after fans stormed the court during their upset win over Duke Saturday. Several of them ran into the Blue Devils star center Kyle Filipowski, who had to be helped off the court with an apparent leg injury.
That should not happen.
After the game, Duke head coach John Shire was visibly frustrated.
When are we going to ban court storming? Like, how many times does a player have to get into something where they get punched or they get pushed or they get taunted right in their face?
In a statement released to social media, Wake Forest athletic director said he agreed with Shire's comments, while Filipowski said he felt the collisions were intentional.
There's no reason where they see a big guy like me trying to work my way up the court and they can't just work around me. You know, there's no excuse for that.
It comes just over a month after Iowa Hawkeyes phenom Caitlin Clark was blindsided by a fan during a similar post-game incident. Luckily, Clark emerged unscathed.
When it happens to two high-profile players like it has in the span of a month, that's something that's going to be an impetus for change.
But Brendan Marks, a college basketball writer for The Athletic, says that enforcing a ban on fans storming the court will prove challenging.
The Southeastern Conference just fined LSU $100,000 because the Tigers fans stormed the court after they beat Kentucky on the last-second shot this week. If you're a fan, are you actually thinking about that in the moment, or are you trying to go celebrate with guys on the court?
It's a big question. I mean, should fans be able to rush onto the court, rush onto the field when players, safety is a concern?
I mean, strictly speaking, it's already not okay, right? I mean, like, it's against the rules. It's not like they
already
welcome you on. Right. Not serving pizza at center court.
But it's so accepted now. But when you look at stuff like that, I now think we have to change. I really do.
Right. Because somebody.
it sounds like you're way past what we used to do back in the day.
Storming the court,
now they're
storming
getting
the
hurt.
They're getting hurt.
Like it's woven in the fabric of sports celebrations in college.
But Nate, it feels like this is why we can't have nice things. Because
Right.
people don't do the right thing.
It's nice when everybody was just milling about, celebrating. Now people are getting hurt.
And you got to pay attention to that.